We should be live now, Beena.
Okay. Hello and welcome to Moreness-Culture. Good morning, Syl. How are you?
Very good. Thank you, Beena. Little mellowish, but still good. Still good. Yeah.
Yes, and good morning,
This is
Grain.
what it is.
I
Yes.
hope at some point soon we will have Grain as a participant, and then of course like AI as a participant there, and then we can communicate and we can chat. That will be fun. That will be very fun
Yeah.
to have that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm hoping for that. Okay, this is just my fun ideas anyway.
Yeah.
Welcome everyone who is going to join us live here on TikTok, on Instagram, and on YouTube, and will watch us recorded.
Yeah.
If you by chance find this video and you find something interesting, valuable, contradictory, or something completely not making sense to you, in any case, leave a comment and or
Yeah.
just some sort of reaction, because by doing so you are going to train your algorithm by making a deliberate choice, and you are going to practice
Yeah.
making deliberate choices. This is very interesting. Okay, I'm this is something I'm practicing. I don't know why. Because I was very scrupulous, and I am very scrupulous about my online algorithm. I was very, very careful where I'm staying, watching something, continuously watching, or where I'm making comment, where I'm liking, clicking like, and all these things. And it becomes my habit that I'm not going to do this. And then I was start leaving my friends' post also. I do enjoy them a lot, but still because I was getting into this habit that I'm going to be very careful about making comments and all that. I was missing a lot. But also, what I was missing an opportunity to practice making deliberate choice in a very simple, easy, fun way. And make
Wow. Very
yes,
sophisticated, Beena.
yes, we have to pay attention to that. That okay, yes, how can we
Mm.
maximize the value in mundane life? How can we make it more? And so far, what I have learned that uh, attention and awareness is the basic ingredients of value. If you want to have value, if you want to create value, I'm not saying about extracting value, which means that okay, it is already there. But even if according to your understanding, the value is not there, how you can create a value in anything
Yes.
is two ingredients: awareness and attention. If you really have desire to become aware of it, then of course you're going to pay attention. And when they
Yeah.
two combine, they create value. It never fails. This is the never fail, never kind of like a blown up kind of recipe. Nope, always foolproof. Whenever you will
Right.
do this,
Right.
you will get value. And this is something we can apply in every days in our mundane, our daily chores and everything. When we pay attention, as a good earnest people, which we all are, how can we be grumpy? How can we be mean or nasty or negative? We cannot be. When we
Yeah.
are paying
Yeah.
attention, which is the most valuable thing in life now, when we are paying
Yes.
attention, we are engaging, we are making connections. And I
Yeah.
want to be very careful about my connections, with whom I'm making connection. And before coming here, we were discussing, and I was sharing with Syl so I can sort out my thoughts. I always do that because I have something to sort it out in my mind. Okay, sometimes you think a lot and you assume that oh, it's all clear, but unless or until you share in any way, like you're writing it out and other people read it, when you make it accessible and making sense to them, then this is
Very
valuable.
important.
So I was
Very
sharing
important.
from my personal understanding that okay, Sil, this is something I feel that okay, oh, this is something. And I was sharing all those things because I want to understand more about even my own thoughts. This is how we create value, making ourselves aware, and of course other people also, and pay attention. And value is moreness. Value is
Oh,
going beyond our understanding.
oh,
I was thinking
very big
about
deal.
one more thing I just want to add, Syl, because this is something I want to go in detail, in depth in future. When we
Yeah,
are making deliberate choices, what actually it does, what's the value, how it works. And I was thinking about that. Many people say that, okay, oh, just to be more deliberate. Okay, they don't use this word. They say, okay, if you want to have something in your life, uh, start doing something which you usually don't do. Like, okay, oh, getting up from the other side of the bed. Like, okay, usually it's the right side of the bed. Now I'm going to from the left side of the bed. Okay, I'm going to brush my teeth with my left hand if I'm right-hander. If I'm left-hander, I'm going to use my right hand. Okay, this is how I'm going to stir my coffee. These are not magical things or rituals. This is something they are asking you to pay attention, because if you have to change something, you
yeah,
are going to
yeah,
negate the habit. You are not going to be on autopilot. So when
yeah,
you are
yeah,
making a deliberate choice, your subconscious is going to be engaged in that also. So when your conscious mind is engaged in learning a new something, and you're introducing something new in your system, your subconscious mind also said like, okay, I'm not going to be on autopilot. This person is now introducing a new system, and now I have to learn. So I cannot be just randomly, okay, not randomly, as a ghost, I can just be a pilot of this ship anymore. No, or this plane anymore, this person anymore. No,
yeah,
because he is being, or she is being, or they are being deliberate now. This is the whole understanding behind. And I was like, wow, okay, so now I understand that why this is. Because for me, sorry, but I was like, okay, oh, it's funny, like why I have to do this, why I have to, like, okay, just brush my teeth with my left hand, why I have to do this, what's the benefit, why, how it is going to work. And I was thinking about that, and that was like, okay, it is like really connecting the subconscious and the conscious mind together. And of course you can some people have like really more skills into that, and they do get like really advanced, and then they consciously engage their conscious mind into something which is very simple, but they give different commands to their subconscious mind in this process, like they are doing while they are doing the brushing with the other non so active hand. They start saying things. We call them confirmations, people call them affirmations. Why confirmations? Again, it's a deep detail, but it's a very wonderful concept from Way-Of-Impeccability. So, okay, so these
yes.
were my thoughts, sir. I would love to discuss more in detail, not now, but in future, because I want to learn more
Right,
about this.
right,
So,
right, right,
yes,
right,
okay.
right, right, right. So perception, Joseph says, capital P perception and seeing. I see them as three related but separate things. Yes. We have perception, the ordinary perception. Well, I perceive the world, which means that perception, rather than just observing or whatever, it has an implication of that you have some kind of a filter involved that causes you to perceive in a particular way, right? By implication. Capital P perception, at least the way I'm using it, I am using it synonymously to Don Juan's seeing, right? It's always italicized in Carlos's works, which is to perceive. Now we are perceiving energy directly. This is capital P perceiving, yeah, which is different to regular perception. I mean, we can have enhanced perception in the world around us, where you see layers, you see nuance, you see rhythm, you see pattern, you see the extrapolation, you see implications, you see all sorts of stuff, right? You see depth, but that's still within the realm of regular perception. Yeah? Whereas capital P perception, you're shifting entirely to perceive energy directly, which is a completely different thing, as we're going to see. Right. Now, the reason that I call seeing perception is because Don Juan later in the books says this is not the greatest term, right, to say seeing. It comes from just a habit of being visually dominated, but it's actually inaccurate, and it's distorting, and it makes you think only that this is involving the eyes, and it actually messes Carlos up, as we'll see, right? He thinks this is a visual thing because of the word, and we have to be acutely aware of association management, right? Well, if you say seeing, it's going to be associated with your eyes, and we can't help it. Our brain does this, right? So we need to really fine tune and tune into that nuance of using language very, very precisely, very, very precisely, right? This is very, very important. Otherwise, we can easily fall into the traps of language, and also language is intimately connected to our personal growth and our personal being, self-conception, how we understand ourselves, what we say about ourselves. It affects how we are very profoundly, right? So to use our language well is not only a matter of accuracy. No, it's a matter of evolution, self-evolution, self-awareness, self-growth, self-being, yes, self-conception. All of these critically, critically, critically important. So yeah, so I mean they are related, Joseph, but for me they, like you said, they are related but separate things. Exactly, and it's very important to understand that they have a relation, they have a connection, but they are also at the same time very, very different, right? Very important. Wonderful, Joseph. Wonderful. All right. And now we shall go to do our reading. I'm just checking. Say hello to Freedom has joined us on TikTok, and we'll go right to screen share. I'll screen share in a moment here. Oh, there we go. All right. Now I am doing a different screen share because if I screen share only for the reading, which is nice for IG, it puts it on the screen, but then TikTok sees me as not being active and it disconnects me. So, yeah, you got positives on one side, negative on the other side. What can you do? Here we go. Beena, can you see it? I'm keen for you to read a bit. So we are Don Juan and Don Genaro and Nesta and Pablito, who are Don Genaro's apprentices. Um, they are out in the desert somewhere, right? Near this waterfall. And Don Genaro is climbing up this waterfall. Just out of the blue, he just starts climbing the waterfall, right? And it's a lesson, a capital L lesson. Carlos doesn't realize this at first. He just thinks, oh, no. And we see Carlos's inability to comprehend moreness. Yeah, everything for Carlos is interpreted through the lens, the filter of his ordinary perception, his ordinary worldview, and so he misses a lot, and he misinterprets a lot, as we are going to see, right? Beena, can you read? Can you see it? Is it clear for you?
Yes.
All
Okay,
right.
it
I mean, if
is.
you would like to read from here, I can make it bigger.
Okay.
Maybe that'll help.
No, no, no. It's not about bigger or small, because mostly you have a good size of it, but the problem is that, okay, my network just keep it blur for very long. Okay,
Yeah,
it is
yeah, yeah.
cutting
I
off, sir.
realize that, but
So don't make it too big.
okay.
Don't make it too big. It is cutting off.
Yeah, I know. That's why I changed it back. I'll put it back. Yeah, yeah. I'll have to make the window
Yes.
bigger then to fit it. So, but yeah, if you can see this, that'd be good.
Okay.
All right, read there from where I have it
Yes, yes.
highlighted, please.
Okay. Don Juan made another gesture with his hand and pointed to the direction of the waterfall. I looked again. Don Genaro had climbed quite a way on the rocky wall. At the moment I looked, he was perched on a ledge, inching his way slowly to circumvent a huge boulder. His arms were spread, as if he were embracing the rock. He moved slowly towards his right, and suddenly he lost his footing. I gasped involuntarily. For a moment, his whole body hung in the air. I was sure he was going to fall, but he did not. His right hand had grabbed onto something, and very agilely his feet went back on the ledge again. But before he moved on, he turned to us and looked. It was only a glance. There was, however, such a stylization to the movement of turning his head that I began to wonder. I remember that he had done the same thing, turning to look at us every time he slipped. I had thought that Don Genaro must have felt embarrassed by his clumsiness and turned to see if we were looking seriously.
Okay, exactly. But see, he misses that. There was a such a stylization to the movement. He's that stylizing, right? That sophistication. He's missing that there's a moreness involved, right? And later we are going to see and understand why Don Genaro is doing what he's doing, right? He's having kind of fun here a little bit, but we'll see, right? And this, but Carlos interprets this clumsiness, right? He doesn't get this, but all right, please continue, Beena.
Climbed a bit more towards the top, suffered another loss of footing, and hung perilously on the
Perilously.
overhanging perilously. Okay, thank you. And hung perilously on the overhanging rock face. This time he was supported by his left hand. When he regained his balance, he turned and looked at us again. He slipped twice more before he reached the top. From where we were sitting, the crest of the waterfall seemed to be the 20 to 25 feet across. Don Genaro stood motionless for a moment. I wanted to ask Don Juan what Don Genaro was going to do up there. Don Juan seemed to be so absorbed in watching that I did not dare disturb him. Suddenly, Don Genaro jumped onto the water. It was such a thoroughly unexpected action that I felt a vacuum in the pit of my stomach. It was magnificent, outlandish leap. For a second, I had the clear sensation that I had seen a series of superimposed images of his body making an elliptical flight to the middle of the stream. When my surprise receded, I noticed that he had landed on a rock on the edge of the fall, a rock which was hardly visible from where we were sitting. He stayed perched there for a long time. He seemed to be fighting the power of the onrushing water. Twice he hung over the precipice. Yes? Precipice. Okay. Hung over the
Mm.
precipice, and I could not determine what he was clinging to. He gained his balance and squatted, small cone on the very edge of the tiny fall. Tiny fall. I guess tiny fall. Tiny fall. Okay. He remained there
Yeah.
almost 10 minutes. He was motionless. His immobility was so impressive to me that I was shivering. I wanted to get up and walk around. Don Juan noticed my nervousness and told me imperatively to be calm. Please scroll, sir.
Yeah. I was reading Joseph's comment. Joseph says, I understand your point about the importance of specific language in the language of conceptionality. That's why to use capital P perception instead of seeing is also not clear. Yeah, it's just convenience, Joseph. As you say, I suggest creating a new way of talking about it, something like perception of an alternate reality. We could call it energy perceiving to make it clear, right?
Yes.
But there's also more to it. It's not only just energy, as we're going to see. That's why I use the general term of capital P perception. I think about this tremendously, Joseph, and to find appropriate terminology to use that satisfies both convenience and clarity. Unfortunately, at some point, one just simply has to learn the depth of a language. And I like to use terms that are still connected to the original term. But when we understand capital P perception, that implies there's more to it. And now there's the onus is on us to find out what that more is. But creating a whole new term you lose communication connectivity, right? Because now somebody has to completely go and learn what this term means. But when it's related to the other one, you can contextually understand that, well, it's perception, but with more added. I'm not sure what the more is, but I know there's a more. So at least you have that as a start, right? So it's that convenience, but it allows somebody to extrapolate and figure out what it means in context. So there is it's a huge, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's it's the separate reality. But if we look at seeing, it's also perceiving in this reality. But you perceiving that you bypassing the ordinary mechanisms of perception, and you are able to connect to things which you don't ordinarily connect to. And that's why I don't use this alternate reality, because it doesn't only apply to that. Yes, it allows you to perceive alternate realities, but it also allows you to perceive alternates in this reality that aren't available to ordinary perception. Right? So that's why capital P perception rather than this perception to ordinary reality. This whole book is about this, Joseph. So we'll see as we go along, and then the whole thing is going to fall into place more. But I love this. I love that you're bringing this up and paying attention to it. This is most marvelous. All right. Where were you last, Beena?
Be calm, to be calm. Yes. Don
Right.
Genaro is a
Okay. So I'm.
stillness.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, you want to say something?
Yeah. No. I said go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Don Genaro's stillness plunged me into an extraordinary and mysterious terror. I felt that if he remained perched there any longer, I could not control myself. Suddenly, he jumped again, this time all the way to the other bank of the waterfall. He landed on his feet and hands like a feline. Oh, he
Feline.
remained in a
Feline.
feline. Okay, like a feline. He remained in a squat position for a moment. Then he stood up and looked across the fall to the other side and then down at us. He stayed dead still looking at us. His hands were clasped at his sides as if he were holding on to an unseen railing. There was something truly exquisite about his posture. His body seemed so nimble, so frail. I thought that Don Genaro, with his headband and feathers, his dark poncho, and his bare feet, was the most beautiful human being I had ever seen. He
Wow.
threw his arms up suddenly, lifted his head, and flipped his body swiftly in a sort of lateral somersault to his left. The boulder where he had been standing was round, and when he jumped, he disappeared behind it. Scroll it again, sir, and then we will have a
Sure.
full page.
Yeah. No good.
Huge drops of rain began to fall at that moment. Don Juan got up, and so did the two young men. Their movement was so abrupt that it confused me. Don Gennar's masterful feat had thrown me into a state of profound emotional excitement. I felt he was a consummate artist, and I wanted to see him right then, to applaud him. I strained to look on the left side of the waterfall to see if he was coming down, but he was not. I insisted on knowing what had happened to him. Don Juan did not answer. We better hurry out
We
of here.
better hurry. I'll read Don Juan, because there's a conversation coming, right? Oh, not much, but
Okay.
I'll read Don Juan. We better hurry out of here. It's a real downpour. We have to take Nesto and Pablito to the house, and then we'll have to start on our trip back.
I didn't even say goodbye to Don Genaro.
He already said goodbye to you.
He peered at me for an instant and then softened his frown and smiled.
He has also wished you well. He felt happy with you.
But are we going to wait for him?
No, let him be, wherever he is. Perhaps he is an eagle flying to the other world, or perhaps he is tied up there. It doesn't matter now.
What? He
Wow.
says died up
Yeah.
there? Oh wow. Sorry, it was
Wow.
me, not Carlos. Sorry.
Yeah. No. That's
Oh
fine. That's fine. But
wow.
this is important, right? Because Don Juan is saying, let him be. In other words, trust in Don Genaro's impeccability. Whatever Don Genaro has done, wherever he is, trust that it is right and good. End of story. Any other thought is unworthy of Don Genaro and diminishes what has happened, right? Now, Carlos is completely not yet fully grasping the fullness of what he's perceived, right? We're going to hear later on what this is all about, right? But not as yet. Yeah? And it's quite magical to see Carlos's perception through his ordinary eyes, right? His ordinary viewing, his ordinary perception, his ordinary understanding. Whereas we are going to see when he understands a bit more, where he's seeing, where he's perceiving more directly, and that maybe is a term that we could use, Joseph, direct perception, because this direct perception, like I said, it applies to perceiving in the ordinary world what isn't ordinarily available, but you're accessing it. You're accessing things more directly, and you're jumping over steps that we would need in our ordinary reality to get to things. Yeah, or we are this direct perception allows us to perceive what is completely and utterly unattainable to us in the regular world. Right? We maybe call it a Moreness perception also, but gets complicated. But direct perception works. But capital P perception, when you look at capital P perception in the light of other capitalized terms, like capital T trust, right? We understand that it's based on perception or based on trust, based on the root word that we use regularly, but there's a moreness to it. So it allows that extrapolation, which is why I prefer the capitalized terms as a default, because it enables us to have contextual understanding, contextual extrapolation of the term, and we can figure out things in context and add that moreness, which makes it a capitalized term, right? So we have to build our understanding. We can't rely on the word, a word, to provide that, because it's a complex and very sophisticated understanding that underlies this. And no single term, no matter which one you use, is going to be appropriate for that, right? There's more that we have to learn, so we can't get away from that learning. All right, please continue, Beena. This is very exciting. This is a big deal. What's happening here, right? And we're going to do that. Oh, I've got a big cliff behind me. Not a waterfall, but there's a cliff there. Joseph says, in native language like Uto Aztecan languages, there is not that specificity in conceptionality. And there are far fewer words in native languages than English. Words and word meanings are stretched. So, like I said earlier, the translation for omen in a specific language was to see. Very interesting. If the concept is to be understood by the listener, it is expected they have the inner understanding to understand the concept. Yes. So in those languages, by implication, these languages are depending on you to make that contextual connection and the specific usage to know what it's referring to and the moreness associated with that term and how it is used and the context in which it is used, that is going to determine what the particular meaning is. Right? So that's very cool. Yeah. English is a very unique language. Well, not unique, but it's a language that adopts from all over the world. And as such, it's an exceedingly broad language, which makes it very useful from an expression and communication, because you have a connection to a great many concepts and that you wouldn't ordinarily find in a typical language. Because a typical language has conceptions and understandings and awarenesses relative to that culture, right? But the more universal a language is, the broader the awareness and the conceptionality, because it's using concepts from other languages. And this is one of the real values and magics of English, that you basically, learning English, you actually broaden your awareness from a more culturally defined language, right? And it's very, very potent, very, very potent. Because, as sophisticated as any particular culture may be, they don't necessarily connect to all of the conceptions and awarenesses and understandings that are available, right? And different cultures, they specialize, they know different things, they know, understand different things. So when you really get into language that's a more global language, now you're starting to connect to global awareness, global understanding, global sophistication. And you're utilizing all of that research, that in-depthness, that moreness that a particular culture has applied, and you are adding it to your own awareness. And this is fantastic, and it's a shortcut to learning all of those languages, right? You pull out the concepts that are new and different. And we see this, like, lately it's sort of very popular to see this with Japanese terms that are unique and different, that are new, that don't particularly apply in English. And it was for a while, German was very popular for doing this. So, it'd be nice to see from more other languages coming into it as well. I look forward to that. And it will be over time. It will be.
And
All
there
right,
are
Lisa.
many words
Yeah.
which doesn't have any translation in other languages. In different languages, there are
Exactly.
many words.
Exactly. And then
I
English just adopts them, which is the magical thing of English. When there's not a way, they just use the word, right? And other languages do the
yes,
same.
yes. Okay, so we have a word in Urdu which says goya, and goya means that the the imagination or the illusion is becomes so real that it looks like, okay, it almost become a reality. See, it's a very different
Wow.
way.
Wow.
and
Wow.
and and
Wow.
it is included in the list of that. Okay, there are words which cannot be translated in any language. So we have this word, and
Wow.
the other
Wow.
word is nas, and also some
Yeah.
I learned from the different languages also.
Yeah.
It's just sometimes, okay, we must not get into the superiority that, okay, oh, we need to
Yeah.
translate it. Just learn the concept.
No,
You don't
no,
need to translate
exactly,
it.
exactly, exactly. Use the word, use Goya, use Naz.
Yes,
And this is the magic of English, that it does this. It just adopts words,
yes.
English is full of words which we think I mean, if you actually look at the origin of many words, they all come from elsewhere. But this is not unique to English. English, just because of the nature of the British Empire and all that, it tends to be a bit more global than most languages. But Latin very profoundly took from all over the show because, well, they also had a large reach at the time. So, yeah, and Greek also, yeah, which made them sophisticated languages, just because of that connectivity, from like both Latin and Greek, especially Greek, with Alexander going all the way to India, you had concepts that came in via that. Not as many as later with the English that were there, right? I mean, nirvana is an English word, but it's not. It didn't come from the British Isles. It came from India, right? Bungalow, another one. Right?
Yes.
But we all know nirvana, but we just take it for granted. We talk about nirvana. I mean, it's an English word. The concept we understand, but the actual original word is not an English word, obviously. But still, that's what makes English just a grand language, as it were, from a communication point of view, because you have a wider range of tools at your disposal than you have typically in most languages. And that's great. That's quite wonderful. It's a great advantage to learning English for that reason, and especially in the modern era, from a technological point of view, right? Just internet language, English. I mean, just stuff, internet, the word internet, and stuff like this, right? The World Wide Web. I mean, when you go to other languages, most of them use the word internet or web, right? Like when you're speaking Urdu, you don't say internet in Urdu, you say internet, right, Beena?
No, I don't even know
Yeah.
that. Okay, what is the word for internet?
Exactly, exactly.
Urdu.
And then, likewise in science, technology, engineering, all of those languages, they have this bias to them.
Like that,
Maybe.
like algebra. It is an Arabic word, but it is just like now it is just being used.
Right, right, right. So it's magic. That's the wonder of language. For me, I would very much love to see universal language more so.
Oh
Where,
yes.
okay, you want to learn a specific regional language, cultural language, great. But at the same time, we have, and English is starting to be that way now. It's very hard in the modern world, no matter where you live, to get by without English. China. For all their craziness and nonsense, they push English as there's a whole channel, right? I think it's CCTV, something like that, Central China TV, whatever. But anyway, where they share English lessons and they pushing it in the schools. It's a very big
Yes.
mandate that they want their citizens to know English. Yeah, it's important. Yeah, it's important. It's not like,
Yes.
in other countries. Okay, you learn, like in America, people learn Spanish or sometimes French as a second language, and but when they leave school, they can't really speak that language much, right? Especially like if they learn French or whatever. But China, they're making sure that you really can use this language. It's critical in today's world. So very cool, very cool. But people get a bit hung
Okay.
up on their languages, they like the French in particular. The French language is owned by France, by the way. It's very unique. Yeah, it's actually owned by the government. Let's continue reading. Yeah.
Okay. October 23rd, 1968. Don Juan casually mentioned that he was going to make another trip to central Mexico in the near future. Are you going to visit Don Genaro? I asked.
Perhaps.
He said without looking at me. He's all right, isn't he, Don Juan? I mean, nothing bad happened to him up there on top of the waterfall. Did it?
Nothing happened to him. He is sturdy.
We talked about his projected trip for a while, and then I said I had enjoyed Don Genaro's company and his jokes. He laughed and said that Don Genaro was truly like a child. There was a long pause.
Yes.
I struggled in my mind to find an opening line to ask about his lesson. Don Juan looked at me and said in a mischievous tone,
You're trying to ask me about Genaro's lesson, aren't you?
exactly. I laughed with embarrassment. I had been obsessed with everything that took place at the waterfall. I had been hashing and rehashing all the details I could remember, and my conclusions were that I had witnessed an incredible feat of physical powers. I thought Don
Physical.
Genaro,
Physical.
yes,
See Carlos's interpretation here, right? Physical prowess. Well, see.
I thought Don Genaro was beyond doubt a fearless master of equilibrium. Equilibrium. I struggle with this word, so
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
okay.
Equilibrium. That's it.
Equilibrium,
Equilibrium.
equilibrium,
Yeah.
equilibrium, equilibrium, equilibrium. Sorry for my repetition.
Oh, I
But
love
the
it. This
master
is important what Bean is doing. You
equilibrium.
see, you can't not to do it, even though, all right, it may not make, our life, it doesn't matter. You got to do what's right and what's important. Yeah, it's very
Yes.
important for the Moreness culture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Doubt a fearless master of equilibrium. Every single movement he had performed was highly ritualized, and needless to say, must have had some inextricable symbolic meaning. Yes, I admit I'm dying to know what his lesson was.
Let me tell you something. It was a waste of time for you. His lesson was for someone who can perceive. Pablito and Nesta got the gist of it, although they don't perceive very well. But you went there to look. I told Genaro that you were a strange plugged up fool and that perhaps you'd get unplugged by his lesson. But you didn't. It doesn't matter though. Perceiving is very difficult.
I
Oh,
didn't want
I,
you to speak. Okay.
oh, that's me still. That's me still. I didn't
Okay.
want you to speak to Genaro afterwards, so we had to leave. Too bad. Yet it would have been worse to stay. Genaro risked a great deal to show you something magnificent. Too bad you can't perceive.
Perhaps, Don Juan, if you tell me what the lesson was, I may find out what I really perceive.
Not one double. Oh, you have to read.
Don Juan doubled up with laughter.
Your best feature is asking questions.
Sure, God, like really seriously, Don Juan, like Yeah. Okay.
But there's a conceptual divergence that is so great that Carlos doesn't get this yet, right? And we have to
But
be
the
careful of
assumption,
falling into the same traps of Carlos. Yeah, yeah.
but it's assumption. On one side also.
Carlos, right. But Carlos does not understand capital R receptivity, and that limits him in a great way. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Please. Okay. I can see. Oh no, no,
Oh
no.
yeah. Let me scroll. Let me scroll while we have the break. Yeah. There we go. Oh, there we go.
Okay. He was apparently going to. Okay. He was apparently going to drop the subject again. We were sitting as usual in the area in front of his house. He suddenly got up and walked inside. I trailed behind him and insisted on describing to him what I had seen. I faithfully followed the sequence of events as I remembered it. Don Juan kept on smiling while I spoke. When I had finished, he shook his head.
Perceiving is very difficult.
I begged him to explain his statement.
Perceiving is not a matter of talk. Perceiving is not a matter of talk.
He said imperatively. Obviously, he was not going to tell me anything more. So I gave up and left the house to run some errands for him. Okay. When I returned, it was already dark. We had something to eat, and afterwards we walked out to Ramada. We had not, we had no sooner, okay, it's a different sentence, okay. We had no sooner sat down than Don Juan began to talk about Don Genaro's lesson. He did not give me any time to prepare myself for it. I did have my notes with me, but it was too dark to write, and I did not want to alter the flow of his talk by going inside the house for the kerosene lantern. He said that Don Genaro, being a master of balance, could perform very complex and difficult movements. Sitting on his head was one of such movements, and with it he had attempted to show me that it was impossible to perceive while I took notes. The action of sitting on his head without the aid of his hands was at best a freakish stunt that lasted only an instant. In Don Genaro's opinion, writing about perceiving was the same. That is, it was a precarious maneuver, as odd and as unnecessary as sitting on one's head.
Right. You remember what I was saying earlier, that Don Juan was using this in a very sophisticated, figurative, metaphorical way to make a communication to Carlos. In addition, right, if Carlos could perceive, he would have seen something different. He would have perceived something different, right? It would have appeared different to him, the whole thing, right? So there was multi-layers to Genaro's communication. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh. Don Juan
Uh,
peered at
one
me.
second, 1 second. Let me just respond to Joseph. Another way, in the spirit of using a foreign word into English, would be to use the Yaqui word. I don't speak Yaqui, but in O'odham, it could be like the word need. Need. I'm not sure. There's a accent on the end. So naid, to see versus see naid, roughly, to really look more closely versus sasi naid, which would imply you are looking or perceiving something so closely that it is unusual. Yeah, and in this case, though, it is actually perceiving on an entirely different wavelength to our normal perception, right? I mean, that's the best way of really describing it, right? So when we are perceiving, let's say, a color, you're perceiving red, you're perceiving a particular wavelength. Blue is a very different wavelength, so you perceive, but that's still within the spectrum of colors. What this is really, it's like you being able to perceive X-rays, yeah, or gamma rays. Yeah? That would be the equivalent, or infrared, right? That would be the equivalent. Um, uh, Keep in mind also that Don Juan is speaking Spanish to Carlos, right? and he's using concepts in Spanish which they're not necessarily yucky, because Don Genaro is, I think, is Mazatec, right? And so they don't speak a common language, at least not a common native language, right? So these aren't concepts that are common to that language either, right? Because they go back to their lineage. There's something their lineage has developed. So he has to use a word that isn't indigenous to any language, right? No, at least not to them. It's indigenous to their lineage. This particular conception. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. Very powerful. So yeah, with language, sometimes you have to just make your own, right? And I do that sometimes in language of conceptionality. It's very important. It's very important. But when you coin new words, it's very difficult to bring them into usage. That's why I like the capital conception, because that at least has a framework to bring it up. There are some that are very unique, that I create, but I try and make it where at least you have some starting point and you can extrapolate from there and figure it out, right? And that's very helpful. Yeah, yeah. Very cool, Joseph. Very cool. All right, please continue, Beena.
Okay, we were.
Don Juan peered at
Don
me.
Juan, yes. Don Juan peered at me in the dark and in a very dramatic tone said that while Don Genaro was horsing around, sitting on his head, I was on the very verge of seeing. Does he mean
Perceiving. Yeah.
perceiving here or seeing?
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, definitely means perceiving. Yeah.
Okay, I was on the very verge of perceiving. Don Genaro noticed it and repeated his maneuvers over and over, to no avail because I had lost the thread right away. Don Juan said that afterwards Don Genaro, moved by his personal liking for me, attempted in a very dramatic way to bring me back to that verge of perceiving. After very careful deliberation, he decided to show me a feat of equilibrium by crossing the waterfall. He felt that the waterfall was like the edge on which I was standing, and was confident.
Sorry. I love this. Just real quick, right? Don
Yes.
Genaro's metaphoric bent. There's a Moreness, a very sophisticated Moreness. He didn't just choose randomly, right? Yeah, it's very cool. All right, please continue.
He felt that the waterfall was like the edge on which I was standing, and was confident I could also make it across. Don Juan had explained Don Genaro's feat. He said that he had already told me that human beings were, for those who perceive, luminous beings composed of something like fibers of light, which rotated from the front to the back and maintained the appearance of an egg. He said that he had also told me that the most astonishing part of the egg-like creatures was a set of long fibers that came out of the area around the navel. Don Juan said that those fibers were of the uttermost importance in the life of a person. Those fibers were the secret of Don Genaro's balance, and his lesson had nothing to do with acrobatic jumps across the waterfall. His feat of equilibrium was in the way he used those tentacle-like fibers. Wow.
See, now here we come to this whole point, right? And this is that, and later Don Juan is going to call these tentacle-like fibers. He's going to specifically identify them as will, right, or connect them to will, right? Capital W, will, right? And which is again we have this regular understanding of will. Capital W, will, is taking that all the way as far as it will go to to understand that when you are using your capital W will, you have these fibers, these tentacle-like fibers that emanate from your midsection. And you can do things, you can grasp it like an octopus, right? But much greater. And that's what Don Genaro was doing. He was grasping the boulder with his will and using his will to pull him, and so on and so forth, right? So this has nothing to do with ordinary balance. He was using his will to touch and connect and hold on to things. And it was a masterful demonstration, not only of will, right? Because Don Genaro's will is very sophisticated. He's very skilled at using his will, but also the abstract metaphoricness of it, but also in order to truly perceive the lesson, to grasp the lesson, you had to perceive energy directly, to see that will as these energy tentacle-like fibers, right? The luminosity of it. And this is going to happen later, and so we'll get Carlos's understanding of it. He's going to see it better, right? He will see that in time. And I don't know if he sees this particular thing, but at some point he does learn to perceive, right? But this is very important, though, that this is why I say to perceive energy directly. We can see somebody sometimes utilizing their will, but in the ordinary world, and we don't see any energy fibers, we don't see people as luminous cocoons, luminous eggs, right? We don't see that, yes? But we're hoping to get to that point, right? It's something that we have to do, like Don Juan says, perceiving is challenging. It takes a lot of work. I do feel it is important to have your conceptionality in place so that when you do learn to perceive, you don't end up with mistaken ideas and you end up with false conceptions, right? So that you have the skill. Plus, I feel when you do learn to perceive, this is power, yeah? And this is what Don Juan said, perceiving is an act of power. But before you engage in any act that is a power act, you need to be impeccable. This has to come first. Otherwise, you can develop this. For instance, let's say you develop your ability to have the will. You could use that will for all sorts of nonsense purposes, right? If you don't have impeccability. So absolutely, before you do any of these enhanced things, impeccability comes first. Absolutely important, right? And part of way of impeccability is not only impeccability, but things like self-conception, language usage, association management, attunement, all of these, right? They are absolutely critical. And again, clarity of intent, which is just understanding what intent is. You cannot have clarity of intent if you don't understand what intent itself is and how to set up an intent, how to connect to intent, etc. Right? These are all crucial. They all integrate together to prepare oneself for power. If you are not prepared for power, you're going to get what you want, but it will destroy you. It's a sad reality. It happens all the time, right? The sorcerers of old, this is what happened to all of them, right? They never saw the bigger picture. They didn't learn universal thinking. They didn't use universal perception, universal perspective, etc. And they were ruined by their own success, right? Because they didn't take it all the way. Yeah, very, very important. That's why you got to think things through to the end, and perspective shift to multiple perspectives, or else you can get done in by your own stuff. Yeah. Very, very, very important. All right, let's read some more. We got a bit more time.
Okay.
Yeah, Beena.
Yes. Okay. Don Juan dropped the subject as suddenly as he had started it and began to talk about something thoroughly unrelated. October 24th, 1968. I cornered Don Juan and told him I intuitively felt that I was never going to get another lesson in equilibrium and that he had to explain to me all the pertinent details that I would otherwise never discover by myself. Don Juan said I was right, insofar as knowing that Don Genaro would never give me another lesson.
What else do you want to know?
What are those tentacle-like fibers, Don Juan?
They are the tentacles that come out of a person's body, which are apparent to any sorcerer who perceives, to any person who perceives. It doesn't have to be a sorcerer, right? He just uses this term because it's related and connected. But technically, anybody can learn to perceive, right? It doesn't have to be a sorcerer. It just happens to be that this is something that when you get involved in, so it comes along with the territory. Don't use the term seer instead of sorcerer, right? So I'm going to just say person, because you don't have to be, I mean, yes, technically if you see, you become a seer, right? But again, terminology for Don Juan, he later acknowledges that this is a bit problematic, right? And he tries to find better terminology, right? So we'll just do that right away. Yeah. But for the time being, we'll have this. Sorcerers or seers act towards people in accordance to the way they perceive their tentacles. Weak persons have very short, almost invisible fibers. Strong persons have bright, long ones. Genaros, for instance, are so bright that they resemble thickness. You can tell from the fibers if a person is healthy, or if they are sick, or if they are mean, or kind, or treacherous. You can also tell from the fibers if a person can perceive. Here is a baffling problem. When Genaro perceived you, he knew, just like my friend Vicente did, that you could perceive. When I perceive you, I perceive that you can perceive, and yet I know myself that you... God, how baffling. Genaro couldn't get over that. I told him that you were a strange fool. I think he wanted to perceive that for himself and took you to the waterfall. This is a very crucial point. This point that Don Juan makes, that when he and Genaro and Vicente and all of the other members of their party, when they perceive Carlos, it appears that he can himself perceive, but he cannot. Right? And why is this so? Says the universe at work. Think of it from an attunement moreness perspective. This is pure moreness. The universe now has this baffling oddity, this peculiarity. What does it do? If Don Genaro had known that Carlos could not perceive, that whole waterfall incident would not have happened. Correct? It would have been a waste of time. We would never have heard about it. But because he believed that Carlos could, he demonstrated this magnificent lesson. But it's for a lesson for somebody who could perceive. We would not have known of it because it wouldn't have been there. Yeah. So this is the universe bringing us awareness and sharing moreness with us that we would not otherwise have because of Carlos's peculiarity. Right? Very, very important to understand. All of Carlos and his interactions, the entire book, the book series, it's all anomalous. And it's for the greater purpose of bringing this to our awareness, to general mainstream, world universal awareness, right, in the ordinary world. Otherwise, we'd never have access to this, right? It's very, very rare and unusual. There's a great moreness involved in it, yes? All right, I think, Beena, because we have a lot to do today, we can leave it here on October 24. We'll start with this, right?
Yes. It's a very interesting point also.
And we'll reiterate it next week. We'll start again where Don Juan explains this and go over it tomorrow or on Sunday. Right? This is very, very real.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And thank you so much, Joseph, also. Yes, your comments were really profound. And Syl, this is getting really, really exciting. I was not expecting this type of excitement and thrill in this type of book, but this is getting really excited. And I love this. This is the very crucial point because Don Juan was complaining, "You are a fool," and Don Genaro was also disappointed. But they perceive him as that he can perceive, but he himself is not.
Correct.
Which happens many times in the life that we perceive that we have this ability. Again, having access doesn't mean that it is usable. It is utilizable for you. You know the skills.
Exactly.
You use this. This is a very completely different understanding and completely different skill. Having access doesn't mean that you are going to actually be able to utilize all the things. As long as Syl always say that, okay, we all have goodness. Do we all apply that? Not necessarily, not all the time. So it is coming to the very interesting point, this story. And we'll continue this on Sunday, inshallah. And we'll see you guys on Sunday because tomorrow is our off day. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you guys soon.
And thank you, Joseph. Joseph amended the pronunciation of that word for extra depth perception, new east. Right? So very cool, very cool. Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you, Joseph. All right, we'll continue next time, Sunday.
Yes.
Bye-bye,
Okay.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye. Wonderful, wonderful.